Hi, I'm Alcine. I'm a deeper learning coach with Envision Learning Partners.
Hi there, my name is Aragon. I'm the Director of Partnerships at Envision Learning Partners. Alcine approached me a little over about 15 months ago with the Nexus Fellowship, and you knew the folks there, and I didn't know what I was getting into, and it's been an amazing experience, and I love the prompt of professionally and personally. Professionally, it's opened my eyes to initially to inequities that are in the world everywhere, and I think my eyes were closed to those. And as I'd mentioned earlier to you today, I'm really feeling those deeply now. But in parallel, we've been given the tools to not only recognize them, but to push back and lean into them, and to uncover other people's eyes and work with them. So professionally, it's been profound. And then personally, what's been amazing for me, my son has been on this, Tarek has been on this deeper learning equity journey, and is going to be traveling in the Deep South in April. And he's been learning about this in his 13-year-old body, as I've been learning about it in my 51-year-old body. And the dinner conversations have been remarkable, and we're learning from each other. And then I've been sharing with my partner Dana every week of Nexus, been sharing about what I've been learning, and she's been listening deeply. It's been amazing.
Yeah.
Over to you.
Professionally, the things that I'm learning in Nexus are not necessarily new to me, but the way in which they're presented are new because they are so affirming. The ways in which we're talking about things always felt right to me. But that's not the way in which design thinking is presented. It's not the way in which we're talking about facilitation. And I've been trained more classically in these things in order to do my role well. But I just feel so affirmed by the ways in which we are actually talking about these skills and in such depth, right? I've been trained in coaching before of how do you have a coaching conversation to move someone, but it's never been a liberatory focus of coaching. It hasn't been about I, as a skilled coach, will see something in someone and affirm, but it's never been no, actually, that's the purpose of coaching. And it just feels it just feels, I finally, I feel like I can bring my full self to my work with real tools, right? So in the past, the way I brought myself into the work is I know that in our space, research is really important, which is why I spend a lot of time undergirding my practice with research, because I know that that's what white folks need to hear in order to see me as competent. I have that. And now I also have these liberatory tools that I can be I can use research and let me hit you with this, which really will help you fully operate in your full self and open you up. And it just I feel so empowered.
And the detours that come in, we've been warned about detours and white supremacist detours, and giving us the foundations, the multi-layered foundations to cope with those and move back, redivert back to the main purpose. And that I certainly feel more confident doing this work when you prepare deeply for these interactions.
And I think, the personal piece, as you know, is I don't think I would be in the space that I am in terms of even being able to meet someone like John, who is just very different. He's just chakra, crystals, but he's also a scientist, right? And what he so appreciates is how open I am and how authentic I am, and that allows him to be authentic, and we just kind of bounce off of each other. And I don't think I would have been there because I was coming at this work from such a technical expertise piece that I think this fellowship has allowed me to more easily integrate.
It's almost like the fight or flight reaction has been removed into something more deep. I've seen that with you. Maybe there's a space in the middle that is being teased out of you, which I've noticed.
Because it was fight, flight, or freeze for me, or faint. That was the only responses I had, and I can. And I think I've learned a lot from you of just really paying attention to my body and pulling myself back in when I want to leave my body and noticing what's doing that. And you're really good about that. And that's why I love our partnership in this, that I'm there, so I kind of chose who to bring into this partnership. I could have chose other people on the team, but there was something about, I personally work really well with someone who is complementary, right? Like, so here you are, a 50-something-year-old brown man with a deep British accent. We don't even work on same parts of the organization. And I was really looking for how would I grow in ways from your expertise and lived experiences. And you were also new to the team. At the time, you were like the newest team member. So I was like, this is a great opportunity.
2 months in.
2 months. And here I am. Let's go to Nexus. And you're like, okay. Like, and so I wouldn't have wanted to partner doing this work with anyone else. This has been great. Thank you. It's been great. I think for me, my thoughts on the impact is, so because I also run our own fellowship, and at the time I was running it with Gia, our CEO, and our fellowship was the week after our first week of Nexus. And having had that experience, I showed up. I didn't realize I had had such a transformative experience until like day one, halfway through day one of our own fellowship. And Gia was like, what you are doing is beautiful. Like who you are in this space. And I think that was the first time she'd ever seen me facilitate. So she might not have been. I'm glad that was the first time because I'm completely zen and just like, let's bring in breathing. Let's create space. Yes. And so she completely was like that. I think she has seen that is the type of leadership she would like our organization to have. Like she wants our leaders to move in that way. Now, to move more in that way, not forsaking themselves or not forsaking like the more structured pieces of the work or what leadership is, but I think she experienced some liberation in seeing how powerful that was to lead a bunch of leaders through that. And so she's just been really drawn to Nexus to the point, like literally if we're like, we did this at Nexus, she was like, okay, we're doing it. And I just think that's such trust. And so I just see the impact on really presenting a different model of leadership, of how you can show up in the work and hold space for people to do their work. But still like have a very strong vision of where we need to go as an anti-racist pro-Black organization, which she has clearly put the line in the sand and put the stake down. So.
I love that. I think building on that, this work is allowing us, and I think Gia is very aware of wanting to deepen the leadership bench and building potential leaders. And so for my part of it, I'm not involved in DLLF as much, but a chance to grow other leaders in the organization right now with this lovely work that we've done at Nexus. And then also to influence our own leaders. So we've got our executive director, we've got our CEO, and having been an ED and a CEO myself, I'm uniquely positioned in my own shoes to give that gentle, loving, firm feedback and allow us to become the organization that we want to be. And that's internal, and then of course external, working with other school districts. I don't touch that as much as you do, but I could imagine there's a space where we can start influencing that as well.
And we are, I think, through our so through the ways in which we have pushed our org to have clear equity goals, right? Like the work that we did around that in our strategic plan to say, no, like equity needs to be in this, and it actually needs to be a big section of this. And we all need to orient around this and figure out how are we going to work towards that around the collective efficacy. I think that's also having an impact on our own internal org. And I think because our part of the organization has always had a reputation of being more diverse, more moving in more intuitive ways. Like we're not like beholden to structures or processes, which can be problematic at times. But also it like we create, we innovate often. I think for the organization to see ELP doing this work, I think is also a model for how it can be done.
Yes.
Right. So I think.
And we're starting to hear that a little bit.
Yeah. So it's exciting to see what's going to happen. I don't know.
It is.
Yeah.
For me, and as I read this question earlier on, I don't feel like I'm fully liberated yet. And I was sharing with this with you earlier that I'm on that journey, but my chest still feels tight, and I feel I'm in environments that can be threatening at times, and so I haven't realized that full potential, but I do realize I'm on that journey. And in terms of transformation, I'm feeling it. very much so. If I compare now to 12 months ago, I'm wide awake. And 12 months ago, I was sleeping in so many different ways that you can imagine. So, and the thing I'm most excited about that is the impact we can have on the work. Yeah. But also personally, I'm raising children, and I'm raising them now especially in this past year with Nexus, with a whole outlook on the world and how we can work and be together that I feel is transformative, and I'm excited to see what they're going to do with that, which I didn't grow up with.
Yes. Yeah, that's beautiful. I think about who you are as a dad and how if I could just be at your dinner table, we'll have to make that happen. In terms of how I feel liberated, I feel like I have the words to interrupt and disrupt when I'm not comfortable. Like oftentimes I've just sat in that discomfort and said, okay, if I show that I'm uncomfortable and I'm sure that I'm in pain or this is not working for me, it's going to be viewed a particular way. And now I don't. I have the language to say, actually, y'all should be most concerned with how I am experiencing this. And it's because if we're trying to get to that mission, I'm the one with the most marginalized identity in this moment on our team. And so we have to learn how to center my comfort and center my thriving if we're going to learn anything. And so I feel more emboldened to like move in that way. I also feel that the transformation has been one of just like grounding and settling, right? Like I'm not like, or I'm not reacting, even though there are moments, you see me in moments where I'm reacting, where I like freeze and I'm like, oh my gosh, help me out this. And you will coach me out of it.
Mechanisms together.
We have tools and mechanisms and also like the deep trust between us where even if I'm not ready to move out of a particular space, I know that if you are pushing me to that, it's because A, the work calls for it, or B, you believe that I can get there. And so it's like, okay.
We deeply trust each other's judgment.
Yeah.
Of the situation.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's different. I've never had that kind of work experience. Yeah. Where I really do, and also I will say that this journey, this liberation, I've been able to see who I am as a liberated person, and therefore made requests and kind of demanded, this is how I want to be seen. Like what Kelly said this morning about when you don't show up, people make you up. That. And so like I'm showing up, so people don't like, you don't get to just make me up. You don't get to treat me however you want to treat me because you think this is no. I'm going to show up. I'm going to express like what's really happening for me from a authentic space, and part of what I require of people is to like own that, figure that out, move through it, and like do the work.
I see you show up in spaces, and you clearly come into knowing who you are and defining that space, and you take that space up for yourself so that others can't define it. And I see you always entering spaces carefully. You seem to be thinking about it, maybe subconsciously, but when you enter the space, my goodness, you're there. You're there, and everyone sees you, and you it's not being defined for you, you're defining, which is beautiful to see.
And I hope that it also creates space for other people to do that. Like I'm not doing that just to take up space. I'm doing that as like, here's the space that we all need to take up when we are really moving authentically, not when we're moving out of like white supremacy or reacting or internalized white supremacy, but like when we're moving authentically. Like I love how you show up. You are clearly knowledgeable, you are clearly competent, and yet you show up in such a stance of curiosity, which is a juxtaposition, right? Like people are like, what? Like you know these things, and how is it that you're still curious and still have a lot to learn? And I think that is a beautiful stance for anyone doing this work, especially a leader. You have to stay curious. You have to show up.
It's such a powerful thing to hold on to. Is remaining curious even when you think you know everything.
Especially in a learning organization, duh.
Yeah,
right?
It keeps you open.
You gotta show up as a learner.
It keeps you, yeah. Part of the guidance with Nexus is to center the voices of those most marginalized, and our pilot, initial pilot to find those voices and deeply listen to them and listen to their brilliance and raise them up and center them, I think is something that once we get underway will have a lasting impact on the organization.
And I think with our own fellowship with DLLF, Deeper Learning Leadership Forum, as the lead programmer on that, where I designed the learning agenda for these district leaders and these state leaders and these people who have real power and the ability to shift and change learning experiences for hundreds of thousands of kids, how that shows up is I am more intentional about creating the healing that the adults need to do so that they can actually listen to the most marginalized, learn to follow the most marginalized leads, like, listening for their brilliance, and creating space for them to humanize themselves in the work. Because, if you don't really see your own humanity, then you're going to trample in your creation of systems. And so even simple things like bringing in the body work, what I often bring, and you saw during the summer at the accelerator, of just like, where are you feeling this in your body? And I just saw people like own that. By the end of the week, everyone was like completely in tune with their body, and then not able to justify certain things that they might have been able to justify doing in the beginning of the week for the sake of urgency, for the sake of doing it for the kids. So I think I've been more intentional about my facilitation and how I build agendas. And then also, I'm in Kentucky. I'm in spaces where sometimes I'm the only person who looks like me.
Yes.
And, I hear people say things. I hear people use coded racialized language. I also hear people say things that are sometimes not as coded. And I'm able to not react and able to hold that space with grace and able to question or stay curious or say, actually, I don't think that that's the real truth of the matter. And I wonder if we thought about it this way, or have we thought about it this way? I was sharing like just before how like me questioning that district in Western Kentucky about what is it that you really are trying to say when you want to help kids develop their character, and them having the aha. But I had to sit and listen to some really interesting language being thrown around without judgment.
You listened with love and without judgment, and you came back with an offering, and that's a testament to your facilitating skills.
And it created so much room for them to back away from something that was really dangerous for the students in their district.
Yeah.
And then they crafted something. I'm thinking about the triangle, like the hero, villain, victim that we've learned here, and like moved them from this space of like, well, what do we do? Because there was a moment where they're like, oh my gosh, we did something really wrong and awful. And instead of being the victim, okay, now what can we create?
Yeah.
We have this opportunity. I'm here to help you create something else.
Yeah.
So what can we create? And that just really shifted things. And we created something really beautiful that like they're ready to implement. So
I would offer one other thing is, and I think you already had this in place, which is recognizing systems that are inequitable. You've always had a very keen eye for that. I didn't. I've been learning that with Nexus. And I've certainly learnt to come in with a mechanic's hand to start to dismantle those systems. And then I feel like we've both learnt as designers with equity-centered design systems that are robust enough to hold those firm.
And to attend to how we do things, not just what we want to do and the outcomes.
Not the destination.
Not the destination,
but
not the product, but the process. Like we are constantly talking about how will people experience this? How will they move through this so that they feel whole, intact, and feel fortified to actually do the hard work.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
I think the Nexus Fellowship releases the transformative self within. We've all got it within us as humans, and it's often buried. And I think it unshackles that and releases it into the world. That's one piece. We'll sort of bounce back and forth on here.
Yeah, I think the Nexus Fellowship for me has given me real tools to define my liberated self and then how to work from that liberated self. Within my model, within my structure, right? Like the things that we're learning are not new in the sense that they're, they are new. I don't even know how to describe that, but you get real tools. You get real strategies. You get real skills.
These tools work in the real world, right?
They work in the real world, and
which is rare.
They also work on you, so be prepared to like change and grow. That you might think you're coming in because you want to change your organization, and really if your the real point of change is you and being open to that. But it's with real tools. Like we have learned how to facilitate. We have learned how to make space for people. Like I just think about what we went through with Tiffany today. That's facilitation. How do you plan an agenda for adult learning in a way that's very humanizing, in a way that really honors the wisdom in the room? And I think that, to your point, I say to people that this work is, equity work you have to be a skilled surgeon. It's not something you can do with a hammer. And so many times, at least in my experience, the equity work or the equity fellowships or like professional training has been like, here's this thing for you to like dismantle and break or do blah, 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 disrupt, to be a disruptor, but it's like a hammer. Whereas I think we're using skills and tools of a surgeon.
Yeah.
And we're learning how to like, skin graft and do all those things that are like, you have to pay attention to and you have to be delicate with. But you also are in charge of like radical change.
And I'd say we're practicing it as well. It's like an autopsy when doctors practice on bodies that have deceased, but they get to actually practice on real bodies. And we're hearing with Nexus, you hear about the monumental work that has to be done, but they give you monumental tools to do that work, and you get to practice that with experts.
Practice and reflect.
And reflect, yeah.